right.
Now I feel like I gotta introduce myself.
You want to introduce yourself?
Nah, unless you got like a little background. So I feel like I always have to because there's always people, there's non-art people in the building.
I feel like that's important. Okay, I'm going to introduce myself because it's not as important. So I'm going to keep it simple. My name is Mario Moore. I'm an artist born and raised in Detroit. And I make artwork. I'm going to let you go ahead and do the in-depth.
But before I give mine, I will say that I am sitting beside one of the greatest contemporary painters in America.
Oh, wow. Thank you.
We gonna always be humble with each other. That's how we operate. Middle school art teacher.
Yes, absolutely.
Middle school art teacher, contemporary artist that works in various mediums between, I don't know, object making, drawing, a little bit of everything. Really, I'm just a country boy that like to make stuff. When we get down to the brass tacks, I just like making things. But very, very honored to be beside my brother and one of the best to do it.
All right. So, I think we've talked about this work before. We've talked about new work that you're getting ready to work on and everything. And when I think about this show, right, I think about the history of Christianity, the relic. That's what we're looking at. That's what we're embedded in this body of work. So when thinking about this work, I want to start with the origins of the Black church and the creolization of African spirituality and Christian beliefs, right? A lot of which focus on God and gods, but also ancestors. Can you talk about how your family is the centerpiece of this show?
Let's see. This kind of started during COVID, because not the making of it, just the thoughts of it, because I think I knew about 13 people that died of COVID, like personally. And I don't know, I was getting real homesick for North Carolina, getting homesick. And at the same time, my mom got diagnosed with cancer. So it was like a lot going on.
Yeah.
Boy, you're not gonna make me cry. Because every time we do this, I start crying. And then I just started thinking about, it wasn't so much about God, it was more about God and people and who represented God in my family. And I started thinking about, that's why my kind of little weird umbrella line under this was, before it became Patron Saints of a Black Boy, the initial title was Covered in Black.
Yep.
And it was all about me thinking about all the people who pray for me when I don't, because I really don't be doing it as much as I should. But I think about like how you get past stuff, because I'm still getting blessings from stuff my grandma prayed about 6 years ago. Just who stand in these spaces and who go before me, because it's a lot of days I like, man, I know my grandma that drugged me through the day because I ain't got up and said a prayer. I ain't thank nobody. I just put my clothes on, got in the shower and left. And, only thing I done prayed over is some fries or something. I ain't really been thankful the way I should be thankful during the day.
Right.
But I know it's always somebody. Because even now when I call my mom and my grandma, the first thing they say is, I've been praying for you. I don't care what the opening is. It's like, as soon as I answer the phone, how you doing? I've been praying for you. So it was more about like, who are those people who fill in the gaps, who stand in these spaces when it's sad to say, it's like, who stand in the spaces when you too busy for the divine?
I love that.
Because we all get too busy for that, or we in our own mechanisms and worlds and, and moms and granddads and cousins and whoever fill these spaces. So it kind of became that, also thinking about just, especially more in the Catholic realm where you see relics and these things, and just thinking about like, what would those relics look like if they were my relics and they were Black?
Right.
And I started thinking about the rosaries and the tambourines and so I started making everything in that little table, like all these little small things first. And I called them spiritual fidgets. Because I was like, I want to make things I can take with me in my pocket so my grandma with me. That's why they had those titles like Shelter in a Storm, A Soft Reminder, like all these things. Just like I look at my students who be, doing stuff to calm themselves down. Like, what if I had my grandma in my pocket to, so it started out really small, then it got bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's kind of where it started. I mean, but also too, I think like everybody else, I was just like super depressed during COVID.
Yeah.
And I was like, what's kind of getting me through the depression outside of my therapist? Which I always tell my mama, you can have Jesus and that. You don't need, it's okay to have both. She ought to be like,
right, you have to have one or the other.
Because I remember I said, I'm going to see a therapist. What we do to you? No, ain't nobody done nothing. Like, it's just, I want to go. I need to talk to somebody and it ain't got nothing to do with y'all. And so you can have both. And I think it was more like doing that. And then of course, when you get in grad school and they start like playing with your mind and telling you about art, and everybody was like, this is about grief, and it was like, cause I started painting the first things like that small tambourine of my grandma. I was painting everything with like piano and like coffin lacquer.
Yeah.
That's why it's shiny like that. And people was like, you processing grief cause you painting stuff with lacquer and that's what they use. And I was like, it really ain't that deep. But I just wanted to see what lacquer looked like.
But I think that goes to the point when it comes to conversations like that, especially when like work by Black artists is analyzed, is usually put in that place that it has to be associated with some kind of pain.
Yeah.
Right. Like, and I think, again, in thinking about ancestors, there's a certain element of joy and blessings that comes with that, right? Yeah. And I see that in the work. Also, like another question I have, because you talked about the Catholic Church, right, is I also see a surplus of denominations, right? It's not just I see Baptist, I see Catholic, I even see some Methodists in there. So like, what faith did you grow up in?
So I grew up Baptist, but my dad is Muslim.
Okay.
So
I think that's really.
Sometimes I would go to the church, sometimes I go to the mosque with my dad, and my dad is Sunni Muslim, so it's not, because I would tell people, I'd be like, my dad's Muslim, they'd be like, nation, I'm like, no, it's white folks in there. Like, you go in there, everybody in there, it's a different spot. And then my aunt was like Kojic, and then my uncle was Catholic on this side. And just growing up Black, it was like, my grandma was like, I don't care who house you spend the night over, you going to somebody's church. So it was like, she had this thing, was like, I don't care where you at, you going to a place of worship. And I remember my great grandma, she would always have me laughing because she said, where'd you go? I said, I went to Catholic church with my uncle. She said, same Jesus, same cross. That's what she said. She was always kind of like, as long as you're doing something that's got a higher calling. Type of thing. So you see some of that playing out in here. And I honestly started going, because this is how kids think, I honestly started going to Catholic church a lot with my aunt and uncle, because I went one time and I was like, boy, they got out at 10:45. I am forever going to church with them in the summer, because my grandma was going at like 8 to 1. I was like, we back home 10:45. We done had a fried fish dinner, and I could watch the game. So I'm going, and we ain't dressing up. I'm got like boat shoes on and khaki shorts and a polo, and I had to wear a 3-piece suit if I go with my grandma, my mom, and them. So it was like really selfishness of time.
Yeah.
Even like I said before, like not having time for the divine. It was more like, that's when I got introduced to like baptismal fonts and doing praying the rosary and doing all these different things and following like the homily. You can look in the book and be like, I know exactly what's going on. And so it was kind of like I got exposed to so many different religions, and my dad would be like, well, you ain't got to go with me, you can go with your mama. So it was kind of like you could experience. And my dad always was saying, as long as you got something that's bigger than you in your life and it's better and it's making you better, I'm cool with it. I don't care what it is. And the only difference there was because I wasn't a part of the mosque, I had to sit on the side of the wall. And I would listen and I would take all that in, and and so it was funny. Like my grandma, she did hate when I went with my dad, because we country people born in the South, we Baptists. My grandma, yo, dad dragging you to that place. I don't like, you got a lot of that. But
Right.
I also think growing up like that shaped me as an artist and shaped me just as a person. Like I tell people, I said, I spent every summer of my life on the east side of Detroit, the rest of my time in rural South with my grandparents on the farm, and then the rest of the time with my parents in North Carolina. So I felt like I had a PhD in humanity because I was seeing every phase of life every year. Because I would come back home and I was like, boy, they slick on the east side. I got something for you. Y'all don't know nothing about this. I came to North Carolina, I had some top 10s. People were like, hey, what you got on? What is, you don't know nothing about this? Because everything, I had a Detroit Lions starter jacket. I had all this stuff that was very unfamiliar to rural North Carolina. And I had my grandma bought me a little French rope, I had a little chain. I was fly. And so it was like and so that kind of molded me. Like I rode on the People Mover the first day it opened. My grandma was like, we going on the People Mover. I was in town, I was on the swim mobile. She had me doing paint the town where you paint fire hydrants. And
wow.
every summer I spent the entire summer in Detroit. And I tried to move here. My dad was like, ain't nowhere in the world. He was like, my parents is retired and you ain't going to Denby. So come back home. And what he didn't know is my grandma had already registered me in school. I hadn't went to school for a week. My grandma put me in Notre Dame High School, used to be beside Eastland. She had me set up, and my dad was like, I just don't want you in that element. Because my dad is from Detroit. And he was like, I just don't want you in the city like that full time, especially with just my parents and they older. So I went back to North Carolina and I remember thinking, man, I'm just gonna move to Detroit as soon as I get old enough, as soon as I'm an adult. I don't know how I'm gonna do it. And I remember like maybe my freshman year of college, I was up here for the summer and I was like, I'm gonna get a job at the Free Press. I didn't know how I was gonna get a job at the Free Press. But that's how I got here. The Free Press hired me as a photographer. That was how I circled all the way back to Detroit. One of my mentors right there, Julian Gonzalez, he taught me a lot of stuff. And that's how I got to Detroit. And I can remember coming for the interview, I was like, I ain't gonna get this job. I'm a kid, fresh out of college. And they hired me and I've been in Detroit ever since. And it was, you know how you move someplace and you're like, I'm gonna stay here for a couple years and go back north. And somebody's like, man, you've been in Detroit. I said, boy, Detroit like a dog with mange. You just love it after a while. It's like, so you just get the feeling about it a certain way and then you start taking up for Detroit like the regular Detroit people. And I already had
That's how it works.
I had a fascination with it already just growing up here.
Yeah.
Because I was the East Side kid even though I wasn't. My grandma used to drop me off at Comet Kingdom on the East Side with like $20. We used to go to Michigan Fun Center. I was at Cedar Point. I was doing all the same stuff every regular Detroit kid was doing. I was saying what up. I was doing all of that way in North Carolina. Like I was my own little
They
kid.
was looking at you like, what you talking about?
I knew nobody would steal my starter jacket because I had a Lions starter jacket in the South. Nobody would steal that.
Yeah.
And it was horrible.
It wasn't going good back then. But you talked about something, you talked about photography. And I think, photography being a big part of your practice, you can see it around the room, especially in your drawings. And like thinking about the Catholic Church and the water and with your father but we have the tambourines. Can you talk about where the tambourines come in as far as denominations and things you've seen spiritually in music?
The tambourines came more from, I would say, my great-grandparents' church. They were Baptists, but it had a holiness vibe to it. Like, that's the first time I seen people falling out, getting slayed in the spirit. And I was scared as a kid because I'm like, folks passing out all around me, just falling all over the pews and tambourines is going. And most of the time they had a tambourine. They also had a handkerchief in their hand at the same time. And I was just like fascinated by that because I felt like the tambourine brought this secondary dimension to the church.
Yeah.
And then when I started writing my thesis, I started doing all this research. I did so much research about tambourines, it's crazy, but it was a spiritual tool to usher in the divine. Even in other religions, the tambourine is something that's used to usher in the divine. So the tambourines became a thing, the fans became a thing. And it was like, I used to see people beat on tambourines so much they would beat through them and bust them in the church. And so it was kind of like, it was just my world, because if you was a black kid in the South, that's where you spend all your time. And you know, like you could never tell me 5 years ago I would have made a body of work about the black church and spiritual. That was not on my bingo card. But when I think back about it, a lot of my artistry started in church. One of the worst whippings I got in life was with drawing on offering envelopes. And I was always drawing on the programs in church and the offering envelopes and getting in trouble. And I remember like it was yesterday, I was like drawing on the envelope. You know how you could feel somebody standing behind you, and it was the pastor, and I was like, oh my God. My grandma about to take me downstairs in the basement in the fellowship hall and beat me like a dog. And he said, let me see that. And he kept it. He went up to the...
What was it? The drawing? Do you remember?
It was like the choir stand with the choir in it.
Oh.
And he went up there, and, you know, church going on, nothing's happening. I'm beside my grandma and, you know, asking her for a peppermint and trying to be quiet. And she don't know none of this has taken place, but before he got up, and, you know, in the church, they would say, before I take my text. So before he read his scripture to do it, he said, I don't want none of y'all to bother that boy about drawing in church. He said, he drew the whole choir on it. Look at this. Don't bother him. Let him draw in church. So I spent like years just sitting in church drawing. I don't know. A lot of it, hopefully, just through osmosis came to me, because I was drawing, but I was drawing the people in church. I was drawing the preacher, I was drawing the deacons, I was drawing whatever. And my grandma would, and I said, you remember what Reverend Jones said? You know, I look like, hey, I got permission. Leave me alone.
And look, the pastor gave you permission. Huh?
And so I literally was doing that until I got old enough, and then my grandma made me become an usher or something I could draw and church more.
But I mean,
think about just how those things seep into your life.
Right.
If you were creative, and it's like so many amazing artists in here I see, and it's like, it's hard to explain it if you're not an artist or creative, because even now that I'm talking to you, it's something in the back of my mind. It's a gerbil wheel that's like, make this next, you know, it's like, you can't stop. You would go crazy if you wasn't in not making things. That's why I don't really yell at kids when I see them writing and drawing and doing stuff when they should be listening, because I'm like, I know how that is. And that's how I was. It wasn't like I didn't really want to draw in church, but I just had to. Like I couldn't contain it. My mom always tells these stories, and I can't remember. She was like, when you was 5 or 6, I would come in your room and you would be sleeping. She was like, you would have like color pencils like crasped in your hand. Like, she was like, you was literally going to sleep with like pencils and markers. And man, another terrible whooping I got. I fell asleep with some Higgins super black ink, a bottle in my hand, spilled it all over the brand new carpet in my
That's some serious ink too. That ain't coming out.
I had to be like 8, and my grandma was like,
you
gonna have this carpet till you leave this house. That black spot was in there till I went to college.
Wow.
And it was like shaped like weird African shape. And she was like, you ain't never get nothing new in this room because of the way you painting, you doing too much in this room. So if you're gonna do this, do it. But I'm not gonna put nothing nice in here, because all my sheets got ink on them. They got markers on them, they got paint on them. The room smell like linseed. Something's going on in here. But my grandparents knew enough, even though they only went to like 3rd or 4th grade, they knew enough that I had something, so they supported it. They just kind of got out the way and let me do it. And so I'm thankful for that.
So, you know, a lot of what I really appreciate about your work is, like, even from the pigeon drawings, and it's the level of detail, right? You're really meticulous with graphite and detail. And I want to talk to you about these works, which are kind of outside of the drawings. You're creating objects, but there's a level of detail with them in the adornment. Can you talk about how you've adorned these works, right? In ways that, like, you won't see, you know, a holy water thing that would look like that, right? Like, I mean, you might see a tambourine jazzed up, but it won't be like that. Can you talk about that?
Not with no old black man turning into Jesus.
That's what I'm saying. So can you talk about the level of detail and the adornment in a way it feels like you're adorning your family members and these objects?
So that in particular literally was an idea that was born out of my great grandma. Well, I call her Big Ma, out of Big Ma's house. And she called it the Holy Trinity, but she had this, and for people who don't know, this is what's called a lenticular print. And the lenticular print changes whenever you walk by it, wherever your height, wherever you're sitting, it changes. She had one in her house that was in a big frame. We had a little lamp over top of it with a little light. And hers was a 3-way.
Oh.
Boy, it changed from JFK to Jesus to Martin Luther King. So depending on wherever you was sitting at,
You gotta have that.
she called it the Holy Trinity.
Yeah.
And across from that was I don't know where my grandma got this from. She had a Last Supper picture, big as that dough, above the dining room table.
Oh yeah, everybody had that.
So you could see that, and you could see JFK, whoever you was sitting by. On this side could be Martin Luther King, could be JFK, and that just stuck with me. And it had a little thing where you could dim the light on the lenticular. And when it had a little light, a hood light above it. And it was like brass or copper or something. And when she died, I was like, what happened to that? And that's one of the things that killed me about sometimes, like, especially being an artist, like, when Big Mom died, they like, especially just people in general, they be so busy trying to sell a house, they just throw everything away. Like, everything was gone. The quilts, everything. I was like, well, how can I make my own? And how can it be my granddad? And this one in particular is my mom's dad. And it's called, You Don't Have to Go to Church to Get to Know Your God. And my grandfather, my mom's dad and mom took me in when I was 8. My parents got divorced. And he was like the most incredible person I ever known in my life. Like, I don't know how we was making it. You know how you look back, you're like, I don't know how we was getting through. Because my grandparents did not have a car, but some kind of way we was getting to church on that van and all these other places. And he would borrow a car from his homeboy to go get groceries. And he worked at R.J. Reynolds Tobacco Company making cigarettes.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I never forget this, man, because I couldn't believe it, even at that age. It would rain. My granddad used to walk like 10 miles to work. Rain, snow. I used to see him get bread bags, put his socks inside the bread bag, put the bread bag inside his shoes, and walk to work in the rain. And so it's like, how can you not admire somebody? Like, that is close to God. Like, this person is doing that for me to be able to go to art camp, to do all these things. And so part of it was just putting them in the spaces I felt like they deserve, like these deities and these, like a lot of these tambourines, you get close to them, like this one of my dad's mom. Boy, I didn't deconstruct the church hats. They got her costume jewelry in them. They got earrings in them. As we say in the art world for the snooty people, they charged up. You know how they, they'll tell you, like, you know, you can charge up an item. That just means you putting something in there. I'm trying to tell y'all how it go. People like to use words that it's charged. But I just felt like I had to do it. And then when just doing the research about baptismal fonts and just on a weekly basis of going into a Catholic church and you kind of rinsing away and washing away sins from the week and all those things, I felt that way about my grandfather. It was something about him that felt like he could remove any dirt I had on me. He always helped. He bought me my first car. Like, he was so adamant about getting me to the best place I could be. And it was funny because he did all those things, but you know, old black man, boy, he'll never tell you he love you. I go over there, I'm living with him. And then when I'm in college, I come home and say, Granddad, I love you. Yeah, my grandma say, James, you hear that boy? He said he love you. I heard him. And then I'm walking by, he'd be like, hey, boy, go $200, take back to school with. But he would never say that.
The words would never come.
It was like the words would never come, but that's when you realize how important deeds are. You know, and I think about the Langston Hughes poem, I'd rather see a sermon than hear one any day. Like, I saw it. I didn't have to hear it. I saw how he operated. He showed me how to be a man. I don't think my granddad knew any bill we had in the house. He worked at that tobacco plant 60 hours a week. He come home on Friday, He'd give my grandma the whole check. She pay all the bills, do this. Yeah, we can go get some fish. We got money to do this. You know, a big Friday, we go eat and we go to professional wrestling because I got my love of wrestling from my grandparents.
Yep.
Because that to them was like they other church. They loved that and they put that love of wrestling in me. But you just see people who are like walk-in epitomes of like grace and favor and he would just tell me about life. You know, he would always tell me I would complain about stuff and he'd say, boy, the fair is where you go to see a hog. It ain't nothing fair about nothing. That you got to get it. You got to go do it all the time. They would just tell me about being better people. My grandma would always tell me, and I tell my kids that, she would tell me all the time, you can't plant corn and get tobacco. Whatever you put out there, that's what's coming back. It might be 10 years later, but it's coming back. And so I just felt like even being in that house was like church. That's why you see that cross behind Melanie. That's both my grandparents. And the dirt on the cross is from their front yard. And the title of the cross, and then, you know, if you look historically, especially in the South, people would put crosses above the house, above the door to give protection to the house. But if you look at the title of it, it's called When Grace Was Sufficient and the House Was a Home, because they took me in. And I remember my mom, she always talked, she was like, they didn't even really give me an option. My dad just called and said, pack his stuff up, you come to live with us. Because I felt like at the time, and it's weird because I had empathy for kids like that. My parents got divorced. They both got remarried and had kids. And then I felt like I was nobody's kid because now they both got new husband, new wife, new kid. And I was like, I don't really fit in the puzzle no more. As an 8-year-old in my mind, I'm like, stepdaddy don't love me, stepmama ain't, you know, you're not their child. But I knew the place where the most love was at their house. And that's why I wanted to be. And I called my granddad. I said, I want to come live with y'all. Boy, he was at the house in 15 minutes. In a cab, because I told you he ain't had no car. He came in the house, the cab trunk was open. I think I had like 2 suitcases. I ain't even had nothing. And I saw my mom every day, but I didn't live with them. And I stayed there from 8 till I went to college with my grandparents. You know, so that's kind of how those things go when you get older and you realize like sacrifices that you could never, ever, ever imagine as a kid. You know, you just don't, you know, what's the old saying? Mark Twain says, it's amazing how smart my parents got when I turned 30. You know,
Truth.
I remember going to college and, you know, my mom and dad, both teachers. It's crazy. I'm a teacher, my sister a teacher. And I had to do a FAFSA. My mom had been teaching for like 10 years, 15 years at this point, public school teacher. I said, boy, my mama made $19,000. I don't know how we live. I couldn't fathom that. I was like, she is making no money teaching for kindergarten. And she been teaching for 15, making 19. I think when she ended at 30 years, she was making like $32,000 in North Carolina teaching. I didn't even know we was poor because the love was so abundant. You never saw it, but then you also realized that everybody else was forsaking all their stuff to get you straight. You know, you think back, you're like, well, yeah, they weren't really buying new clothes, but I always had new clothes. I always had Nintendos and a bike and this and that, but nobody else was they wasn't buying stuff. You know, the grandparents that lived in Detroit had a little bit of money because Detroit just got that type of swag about it. Because my grandma was a social worker, my granddad drove the Dot. Boy, they had a brand new Lincoln Town car every 3 years with the rag top. I thought I was in a limo. We had a cigarette light in the back. I used to pushing the button.
Oh, yes.
I'm like 8 years old. I'm
Yes.
like, this thing will burn you. You know, I was telling my cousin, like, well, they got a cigarette light in the back. You know, they living. My grandma got on, you know, she wearing St. John suits and stuff like that. She doing it.
So, you know, thinking about your grandparents, because I think both of these sayings back here are from, I think one is from your granddad and one is from your grandma, right?
So far, the right is my great aunt and the left is my mom's mom.
Okay. Can you you know, because when we think about churches and the signage that you put up to welcome the community in, it can say anything. But also, as you've been, you know, speaking tonight and talking about, you know, these sayings, right? And this is something that you always speak on. And I feel like there's a way in which the language invites the viewer into something that you have to hear, you know, but visually seeing it. And I think in this way, like what made you say, okay, I'm about to take these sayings and put it into this kind of iconical representation?
So being a printmaker, I wanted to have some of these sayings from my family. And I was like, I'm gonna do some letterpress prints. And I did them and I was like, this ain't the vibe I'm looking for. Then I went back and did some relief carbon prints and I was like, it's not what I'm looking for. And during this time, I visited my grandmother. That's why I went to go take all these photographs. And I also went to scavenge the photographs she had. And I went to church with her, and the first thing I saw, and I just didn't remember because it was always the first thing you saw, was this hymnal board. Yeah. And a lot of times at her church, it's gonna tell you how many people was in church last week, how much money they took up, the hymnal they gonna sing. It would tell you everything that was important about church. And it was always right to the right of the pulpit, like right behind it. And I was like, I need to figure out how to repurpose some hymnal boards or where I can get them from. Because I want to put these sayings on there because they hold more space. Yep. On hymnal boards, they hold more power. And it wasn't until I got the grass to where I was telling you how they always, and this was actually a good thing though. And I was talking to Joey, who they teach fiber at Cranbrook. And Joey came to my studio and they said, I love your work, but I especially love the hymnals. And I'm like, yeah.
Right.
And they said, because in 99% of those churches, is always a man speaking. It's never the words of a woman. And you making what women say powerful by putting your aunt and your grandma on these boards. And I never had thought about that. You know why? Because I'm a man making work. I'm not thinking in that realm. But the one on the left, I was older. I was probably like 24, 25, and I was kind of upset, you know, my art career floundering, I ain't happy with this, I ain't happy with that, I'm struggling, this ain't working. And I talked to my grandma and she doing her puzzle. She had a glass, you know how people look down over the glass, she was doing her puzzle, had her house coat on. She just listened to me going on and on and on, complaining about, I probably complained for like an hour. She didn't say a word. And then she looked up and she said, baby, God got a way of slow walking you down. She said, wherever he got for you is gonna be for you. It might be years from now, but you're gonna get everything that you deserve. She said, so don't worry about when it's coming. Just keep doing what you're doing. So that's where that came from. God has a way of slow walking you down. The other one is from my great aunt Tom, my big mama's sister. And we was always at church. Aunt Tom went to church, but she went to church like once a month. And I used to be like, she was also dealing with cancer, but I loved Aunt Tom. She was so smart. So smart. Another person who sharecropped, didn't go to school. And I went and I talked to her. I used to love to just talk to older people. That's what I did in the country. Whenever I was around them, I'm trying to get next to everybody that's 70, 80 years old, drunk, sober, especially the drunk people. My grandma said, you love to be around them drunks. Because I want to hear the stories. I want to hear.
Exactly.
She didn't even call them drunk. She just called them elbow benders.
Wow.
And they used to hang around a big oak tree. And she said, boy, you be around the elbow bender tree every day. Because it was like listening to Richard Pryor. I just have a stool. I'd be like, it's crazy. I get home, I tell my dad, well, you know what they talk about under this tree? And they so drunk, they don't even know I'm there. I'm just listening. I'm bringing it all in. It's like when your parents would have a rent party or a spades party, little, and you just kind of trying to stay out of the sight because you just want to hear what's going on.
You trying not to be noticed. You trying to be in the class so you can get all the good stuff.
And so I used to go sit with Aunt Tom. She was dealing with brain cancer. She fought brain cancer like 3 times. And I said, Aunt Tom, you don't never go to church with us like everybody else go to church. And she looked at me and she said, baby, folks pass church on the way to church. I said, what you talking about? She said, y'all pass by people y'all can help, good you can do on the way to a building. She said, I'm the church and me. She said, if God was here, he wouldn't be at the building. He'd be out here in the street helping people. She said, so I can have church right here in my house. And that's what she told me. So I always remember that. Folks pass church on the way to church. She said, we pass so much good on the way to a building. And she would always tell me that. Because we would always fish together. So that's how I got my love of fishing, was my grandparent, my grandmother, and my great aunt, more so than my dad. And they would take me fishing with them. My grandma and great aunt belonged to a fishing club. All white men and 2 black women.
In North Carolina?
And they paid a monthly fee. It was like a pay late. You could go, they had a key, they could open the thing and fish. And I used to love to fish. And I have all my little reels and rods, and I have all my little stuff. Well, they out there with them cane poles out fishing me to death. They just got the long cane pole. They ain't got a reel. They just, and they taught me how to clean fish. They had a little table you could clean them on site. They were teaching me how to clean fish, and we would talk. And I think like, that's why I probably feel or seem like I'm way older than I am. Because I've just spent way more time around people 30, 40 years older than me than around people my age. Because I just knew, my grandma would always tell me, she said, hey boy, boss sense ain't always good sense. And all the people I admire didn't go to school, but they knew the importance of education. And I would tell people, I would come home from school, the first thing that my grandma would do, let me see the book bag. You got my lesson? What lesson? You ain't in school with me? Now my grandma went to the 3rd grade. She looking at everything I'm doing up to high school. I know a bit more. She don't know nothing about no trig, no algebra.
Yep.
But her thing was like, I'm showing you how important it is by asking you about what you're supposed to be doing. I was telling them I could not do my homework in my room. You had to do it at the kitchen table where no TV was at, no radio, no nothing. And
you had to
could
be
not
seen.
get up. You had to be seen doing it.
Yep.
And my grandma come in there and get that cold Pepsi with them peanuts in the bottom of it. That's what she did. She would get Pepsi and pour peanuts in the bottle. She put that salt on there. She just watched me do work. And she was like, this is so important. You don't realize how important this is. And my granddad would say the same thing. He said, I would get to go to school for like 2 months. Then the harvest come in, they would pull us out of school. We had to work the field. He was like, we never got a chance to even go to school. So it was always like pushing that in my, like, you gotta go to school. You gotta go to school. And that just was like one of those things where, I knew from them there was a difference between like what my grandma called mother's wit and academic learning. I watched them, they taught me how to work hard, how to save, how to build something. I used to work with my great-grandparents, my grandfather. My grandma was the help. She used to wash clothes for white people and iron them. I'm talking about iron their underwear, all the way down to their underwear, sheets, everything, fold them up. They used to come to my house and get them. And my great-grandfather, he started a landscaping business. He got put out of the house when he was 12 and walked to a field and somebody let him stay there to sharecrop. Because his dad was white. And they told him, you can't stay here. He got put out. And started a business later. And by the time it was, he retired from it, he had like 300 or 400 customers in his lawn care business. And he would pay me $25 a day. That was a lot back then. I wasn't thinking that.
That's a lot of money.
I was getting like $125 a week when I was like 11, 12 years old.
Oh, you was paying.
And he would pay me by the day. Everybody else got a check. I used to be like, why everybody get a check? He was like, one, you ain't grown. They got a family and they got to pay taxes.
Yep.
And you just my grandson. And so he would pay me. And every day I say, Granddad, drop me off at the store. Because back then, the only way you could get comic books down in a rural area was at the drugstore. Granddad, drop me at the drugstore. I got to get me some comic books. I got to get a Mad comic thing. I got to get some pork rinds and a new crate. Got to get me some candy. I spend a whole $25 every day. We get ready to go to lunch. I be like, Granddad, can you buy me a burger? He be like, just gave you $25 yesterday.
It's gone.
And I remember one Friday, he had gave me the $25. We was driving. I said, Granddaddy, drop me in town. He looked at me, he said, damn, sleep with the money one night. Just see what it feel like. Damn, sleep with it just one night.
Remember what the color looked like.
But I remember, I never forget this. My grandma, he loved my grandmother so much, my great grandma. He never said I love you either, but I seen him do things. They had a pipe burst. My granddad came in my room at 2 o'clock in the morning, me and my cousin, you know, you share a bed. Me and my cousin sleeping in the same bed. We probably 12, 13, get up, the pipe bust. Why is we getting up at 3 in the morning for the pipe busting? I'm about to call Mr. Winfro at the hardware store. It's 3 in the morning. Man, that white man got up and opened that stove for my grandma, for my granddad. Sold him the pipes. 3 in the morning. My granddad came back home. He always wore that zip up, the one zip up. He had him a coffee, that mother sat on the back porch. He put up some lights on a generator. And me and my cousin we dug a trench from the back porch all the way to where the pipe busted. Ooh. Then once we dug it, he got in there, fixed the pipe. We covered it back up. It was about 6 in the morning. He said, I don't want your grandma to get up and the water ain't working. What?
That's serious. I think that's a good place to end for now. 'Cause